Ain't no economy like the attention economy. On leaving, but never actually leaving. How the hell am I on here again? The thought arrived as an accordion menu folded open to reveal a handful of Instagram profiles hungry for my attention. Before I had time to wonder, my curious thumbs darted into the first account to check what I had missed. I don't even remember why I opened the app, but to explain that, I have to go back, years back actually, to a YouTube video most people should have watched. I watched it, and I still didn't get the message for another decade. The first time I tried to delete my Facebook account, something wild happened. Listening to a Facebook employee talk about platform growth on YouTube in the 2010s, optimistic that I'd gain whatever guru insights they had to offer, I suddenly felt a light cast down on a real internal terror I'd been grappling with, in the dark, up until that point. Every time that little notification bell appeared with a red dot in the top right-hand corner, my system felt a bit of hope, joy, and curiosity. Of course, I always clicked it. The more that little red dot started to appear, the more excited I got. Multiple times a day, in fact. Sometimes I would log in just to see if anything had arrived. However, with real friend activity exhausted, I started noticing random notifications instead. Classmates inviting me to play Farmville, for example. Here I thought I was important in someone's life. A person had taken finite grains of sand from their time vial to post something perhaps funny on my wall, or just to say hello. Instead, a metaphorical mayor of nowhere was referring me to claim an affiliate bonus to juice their fictitious farm's yield. Of course, I was disappointed. But maybe next time it would be good, my inner voice clocked back. So as I listened to that Facebook exec talk, I started to think about why notifications had become less savory and more random. It dawned on me, more time on the platform means more ads. More attention, more money. The time wasted factor wasn't a big concern for me at the time. At 21, time was infinite. Instead, what drove me in fear was something a bit more sinister: conditioning and loss of control. Of course, I, like others, want to feel in control of my life, the captain of my ship. But the thought that something might be actively manipulating me felt a bit eerie. Sure, this website is cool and all, but is it costing me something that I can't quite see yet? The fact that I felt pathetic for checking my notifications to find nothing but in-game invites or recommended apps had apparently started grating against me. But the full register of that thought would only come into focus months later, during an undergraduate lecture in a spring semester. I opened my laptop as the professor mentioned the upcoming assignment available on the portal. Clicking the Chrome icon, I was teleported into the World Wide Web of human knowledge. Having been overwhelmed by the infinite possibility offered by the cyber frontier, sarcasm aside, I found myself on Facebook.com. Wait, what the heck? Why am I here? I said to myself, resolute that this was a mistake. Who knows? Maybe I mistakenly changed my homepage to Facebook. Unlikely. I returned to my business. Recalling the goal, I opened a new tab, and in a split second found the address bar populated with the letter F, followed by an autocomplete suggestion for Facebook.com. Seeing what had just happened, my finger still above the F key, a phantom sweat ensued. I paused, but I didn't really have any words. More like an internal panic and system error freezing up as the lecture went on. My finger trembled as I stared at the screen in disbelief. A pit filled in my stomach. Have I been conditioned into this? I felt terror to the idea that I might genuinely have lost the ability to control myself. Can I stop? What if I can't quit? This is insane! A voice scurried on in my thoughts. Thousands of visits to a uniform resource locator had led to a muscle memory encoded in my system, not chosen, but wired in. I had become less a human and more unconscious rat in search of a fix, trapped in the cold mechanics of a B.F. Skinner box. The notification bell locked me into a variable ratio schedule, unpredictable payouts that kept me pulling the lever. Because the reward was intermittent, my brain became resistant to stopping. Less conscious agent with willpower and more biological machine anticipating a hit and pulling just to check. Moderation is key, everyone says. So I did that, sparing the hilarious details of self-regulatory attempts. Everything from changing passwords, apps like self-control, to multiple forgotten email layers. It didn't matter. Curiosity is such a strong driver to me, I always managed to find a way back into my account. But dropping into the awareness one day of watching myself spend 10 minutes litigating a forgotten password to an email account because I received a notification about someone messaging, I started to wonder about all this coding going on in my brain business. Apparently, MRI scans of patients with long histories of drug and gambling use did not look promising. I started to wonder to myself, could these seemingly less addictive loops be creating permanent changes in my brain? I didn't want to wait to find out. So that's how I got to the deletion screen. 2 or 3 layers deep into retention rhetoric, I arrived at one of the scariest user experiences I think I have ever seen on the internet. A collection of my classmates, longtime friends, and acquaintances appeared in one open fold with a final question. Are you sure you want to do this? Everyone will miss you. I stopped for a moment. K, N, and E? They will miss me? I looked at the smiling photo of E, jovial, happy, full of mischief, and then to K, the girl who I had a small crush on but hadn't the faintest courage to tell her. And then there was N, my partner in crime for dragging out boring classes into rest periods. All of our relationships would suddenly vanish, or so it felt, if I had decided to move forward. Something pulled back in me at that idea, as if these digital silhouettes mattered as much as the real thing, disturbing me even as I felt it. I actually aborted the mission, logging off of the account to think deeply about this dilemma. Thankfully, I came back hours later, clear-headed. I went to my friends list and asked myself, of everyone here who has my phone number, who would actually remember my birthday and text me? The honest answer? Not many. Overriding primal loss aversion, I closed the account for good. I was free, finally, but not for long. About 1 year later, I was scrolling through Instagram. Highlight reels from classmates and friends surfaced in grandeur. People celebrating hard-won degrees with around-the-world travel to Thailand, Europe, and elsewhere. Yet here I was, in D.B. Weldon Library, wondering, why do I suck so much? Not, boy, I wish I could go there, or can't wait to try that. Instead, a visceral theater of envy, prompted by constant, on-demand, upward social comparison, 24/7, 365, at the tap of an icon. Talk about deep value for a billion-dollar acquisition. At the time, I decided to pursue a second undergraduate degree, meaning more school. So as I scrolled through a feed of friends feeding elephants in far-off places, I couldn't help but steep in melancholy. Seeing this downward spiral, I recalled my once Facebook account again and asked, what am I really getting out of this Instagram app? Sure, I'm getting the illusion of connection and opting into this flawed, invisible social contract of normal 20-something behavior. You've got to do it for the gram, right? But what's it all for? This was a serious question, so I sidebarred with my internal counsel to discuss. Let's see. Distraction and entertainment? Sure, I can get on board with that. Plus 1 point. Staying connected because it's cool? Okay, makes sense. Plus 1 point. Staying in touch with old friends? Yeah, I like checking in on people. Plus 1 point. Feeling like my life is horrible and I suck? Negative 20 points. What the hell am I doing here? My inner advocate reconvened and we turned to the jury for a verdict. On the alleged case of the people of Robert's Republic versus social media, on the count of probable destruction to my mental health, the jury unanimously decided guilty. This thing had to go, which sounds easy in theory, but alas, practice. I honestly had to fight myself for feeling like I was imploding what scraps of a social life I had between courses, labs, tutorials, and assignments. Eventually, reason won, and I reached for the deletion button once more. It was over, and I was done. Goodbye, attention economy, or so I thought. Within a handful of years, having gotten used to my canned line, I don't use Instagram, I had 4 new Instagram accounts. One for travel, one for local electronic music scene, one for my DJing, and one for my business project. How the hell was I back in the machine again? To make myself legible for DJ bookings, I needed to demonstrate social presence. And to keep in touch with travel friends, I opted to use a different Finsta account. My electronic music community project actually respawned the rave scene in Kitchener-Waterloo, which led to a series of packed dance floors and a revived community bridge rave, which was unexpected. But it was my business account that took me to somewhere I didn't expect to end up, on the other side of the machine. Motivated to hustle and push my DJ Academy, I took a step deeper into the attention economy, reaching for the glorious marketing tools available. Ads. At the tap of a few buttons, a connected PayPal account, I had the power to pump my content sky high if I could only stomach the sticker price. A regular Don Draper, but more hippie pants and flip-flops than two-piece suits. I was now inside the attention economy, rather than outside, which felt weird. And the issue with all of this? The technology was scarily good. I will never forget the 2 hours I spent one Saturday afternoon in my Toronto apartment on Facebook Ads Manager. How the can there be no articles on how to download an invoice? Where is the support email or phone number? In a desperate attempt against Business Manager, I gave up on downloading invoices and closed the laptop. The platform won, and I gave up. A few minutes later, something dawned on me. It's terrifying that you can have a product so good that your support email can be hidden 7 layers somewhere, and customers just give up looking for it and keep using your product. And I kept spending. When I did stop advertising, however, it wasn't because of my internal frictions. To be honest, if my sales funnel had scaled and my return on ad spend was positive, I probably would have kept going. But I couldn't help shaking this gnawing feeling whenever I interfaced with the platform. Are we all just marketing to each other? Here I was, an inside agent, paying the machine that had made me feel like garbage in the past to help me generate leads for my business in the present. Naturally, I told myself flattering things. The minimalist entrepreneur gave me an out after all. I'm just supporting and contributing to the community of dance music that I care about. Half true, but also, I wanted to sell some courses. This is precisely what Boyan-Cho Han points to in The Crisis of Narration, the perversion of storytelling into story selling. It's the tension between trying to produce high-value content and content that hooks in seconds. But it's hard not to, at some point, feel pressure to sacrifice nuance for something more flat, polarized, but legible, perhaps by design. The same social networks, once happy apps to share with friends, slowly transformed into places where human attention, connection, nuance, and time goes to die. Perhaps the scariest of all is the cost of rewarded deception. The more you tell yourself a story, the more it's validated, and the more you believe it. Imagine how a slightly flattering story about yourself solidifies in your psyche when it's sprinkled continuously with artificial payouts. A digital like costs the giver almost nothing. A casual tap, near zero physical or cognitive effort, yet yields an outsized windfall of social validation for the recipient. How far into the story do you need to go before you can no longer tell what's real from what's aspirational? Apparently, today, attention is all you need, so sometimes it's worth paying attention to what's actually happening to you, even when it's not flattering. On the bus ride from the northern edge of Paros in Greece, I stared out the window in a funk. The time read 10:23 p.m. By all accounts, it was the start of a great night out. Around me were small groups of tipsy young Greeks, honeymoon couples, and visitors to one of Greece's lively islands. Yet I was on my way back home. The weight of my body slumped into the humid motor coach seat. My face sagged in a solemn blank stare, and the empty seat next to me remained open. A minute detail, comically so, had killed my entire optimism for the evening. A pop Afro House remix, spun from a no-name bar, turned me upside down in a wave of frustration, revulsion, and bitterness. It was a reminder of the slow decline of a genre I once loved, now inventory and backing track for a wave of social media DJs. I looked down at my phone and clicked a familiar email. We've made it easy to get back on Instagram. At the swipe of a finger, I re-entered the matrix, but with intention rather than for distraction. Fighting my cognitive dissonance for months, a multi-front war against the persistent documentation in dance music, and my desire to grow as a DJ, it was time to admit defeat. I could not even have a fun night out in Nassau without being kicked into comparison of how I was failing to build my DJ brand and get bookings. I'm tired of comparing myself constantly, unable to have fun, fighting for a cause nobody cares about. If this is what DJing is, I give up. I am not a DJ anymore. I will just teach. The thoughts echoed as I watched my account, Toronto contacts, and time invested over the past 3 years disappear into the digital shredder. All of my attention, energy, focus, frustration, and emotion gone in seconds. I had no more active accounts, besides a hibernating business project. I would have hoped that after a near-decade struggle against social media, I would have come to firm footing, out of the darkness of my comparative psychology. Yet, when I log on to YouTube, a red dotted icon draws up a familiar platter of past feelings. Oh, one notification? What's that? Although I wonder what the long-term consequences of quantified everything are, I still stare in a mix of embarrassment and disappointment that my DJing channel has less than 1,000 subscribers. My ego is still totally invested. Even trying to stand against high-velocity short-form content, it has still encroached on and disrupted platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and today, YouTube. The hardest thing to sit with is wanting to make money from the podcast, the writing, the courses, the content, without letting an algorithm decide who I become while getting there. At base, the honest accounting I have left is a quiet one. sitting inside another Skinner box and seeing it for what it is, recognizing the cost and still not sure if it's enough to leave, reading the same question that flashed on my screen all those years ago. Are you sure you want to do this? And this time, not knowing the answer.